Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Atlanta Startup Podcast. My name is William Leonard, your host for today, and I'm really excited to be sitting down with Thomas Stokell, who is the CEO of Love to Ride. Thomas, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, William. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, I'm really excited. One, because you are one of Valor's newest investments, and I think we'll talk about that a little bit later in the episode, but I'm really just excited about what you're building at Love to Ride. So maybe we can start there with a brief overview of what the company does. And then you have such a fascinating background. I would love for our listeners to learn more about the Thomas Stokell story.
Sure. Thanks, William. So Love to Ride is the platform that governments and businesses use to get more people riding bikes. So we work in 7 countries around the world. We've had over 600,000 riders join our platform. And behavior change is really at the core of the platform and our whole approach. So my background is in behavior change and psychology, and applying that to transportation, to changing behavior, travel behavior, and getting people out of cars and onto bikes. So we have a lot of experience in that. We've baked all that knowledge into this platform and into this new app that we're building to help our customers ultimately be successful at achieving their climate goals, their sustainability goals, their health, their staff engagement and wellness goals. We're really lucky with biking that we can tick a number of boxes and get budget and revenue from a number of different sources, both in government, from sustainability to transportation to health, and same on the corporate side. Different budget holders within companies can be customers of our business. So we're very lucky. Background on story-wise, how did I get into biking and technology? Well, after I finished high school, I took a gap year, and that was a good idea. I worked at a lot of different companies, tried a bunch of different industries out, traveled a bit, and ultimately got prepared to put my nose to the grindstone again and study in college a year later. But one of the companies I worked for was actually a government agency doing behavior change. They were doing things like encouraging people to quit smoking, encouraging people to eat more healthily, encouraging people to put sunscreen on. And we have a big skin cancer problem in New Zealand, and we need people to have healthy behavior around being smart in the sun, wearing a hat, etc. And that really helped me cut my teeth and get my skills up in that area. And they kind of quickly realized I had a bit of a brain. So before I even started college, they said, hey, do you want to organize National Bike Week? They knew I was into bike riding and gave me that opportunity. And I ran for it, and we did a good job of launching that and continuing that program in New Zealand. And I launched as part of that a workplace-based biking challenge. And that was kind of our first product we developed to do that mode shift, to get people on bikes, out of cars. And that was a little while ago. And over the years since then, I've obviously done a variety of things, from working in transportation as a consultant to working for government, to some other startups. And one of the things that we did, I had another startup in the transportation tech space, and we specialized in these kind of workplace challenges. And then in 2013, I took a year off and traveled. I lived in Amsterdam and the Netherlands for a while, and no wife, no kids at that point. So I was footloose and fancy free. And I actually was moving back to New Zealand from the UK, where I've been the last 5 years. And I came up with the concept of Love to Ride, which was a year-round platform that would apply all the things that we've learned over the years about behavior change and biking and transportation, and bake it into a platform that could really help our clients and solve all of their problems, give them the data they needed, give them the measurable results they needed, etc. And that's when Love to Ride was born in 2014, and we've bootstrapped it since then up to 2 million in revenue, and obviously did our seed round a little later than other folks, but we've obviously proven that we have a real business and a real product market fit, and are ready for some capital to truly grow the business and realize the opportunity ahead of us.
That's right. And so it sounds like biking has been embedded in your blood since you were a teenager, and you studied behavioral change, and now you applied that to transportation, and it's at the core of the Love to Ride platform. And so you're targeting government entities, organizations, and businesses of all sizes, I believe, with this platform. So tell us a little bit more about how it works and the inner workings of Love to Ride as a whole.
Sure. So just on the customer side, most of our customers at the moment are government entities of different sizes. So with whole country departments, like the Department for Transportation in New Zealand, we work at the state level, we work at the local level, we work in some tiny towns and counties, Shasta County in California. So we can work with all those different governments. We also work with businesses, and thankfully it's a similar product experience. We're not having to like create a new product. We just have to open up our marketing and sales to a new market. But once that customer's on board, it's a similar experience to the rider and for the customer. So we're really lucky in that. And size-wise, on the corporate side, we work with some massive, global companies. We've worked with Facebook, and we're talking with Ford Europe at the moment about a big deal there. And then we've got a SaaS platform, so I get emails, every day with from $125 deals of some little 5-person company signing up to our platform to a $5,000 plan or whatever just signed up. So it's cool, man. It's great to see it working. And from a experience perspective, as both a rider and a customer. So once a customer comes on board, they get access to our platform, all their staff or all their community get access to our platform. And we have seasonal campaigns that we deploy with them across the hemispheres. So obviously the Northern Hemisphere has a similar season. So we do a spring campaign, getting people back on their bikes. We do a Mayor's Bike Month, big campaign with workplaces. We do a fall campaign, and that's largely about, after encouraging people to get out and ride during the summer, maybe just maybe just recreationally. In that campaign, we're starting to get them to think about biking to work and biking for transportation. And then we do a winter campaign to continue to support and encourage people to overcome any barriers they have to riding in winter. And then it repeats again. And the platform delivers those campaigns for us. It allows people to set goals and achieve badges and see their stats and measure their progress, connect with friends, be supportive of each other. We've got a high five feature, which is, I guess, similar to a like. We've got a stories feature, all that good social stuff. And then, of course, our customers get to see all the great stats and data and the measurable impact. And we get them reports and dashboards so they can show to their bosses and ultimately their funders the impact that the Love to Ride program is having in their organization.
Right. And you talk about these statistics, the overall impacts and the measurable data that the platform is collecting. And I think you're at, several 100,000 riders on the platform. Over millions of rides have been facilitated on the platform. Talk to us more a little bit about the overview and how you all have been able to impact the climate change goals of some of your customers. So outcomes, percentages of employees riding, things like that. How are you all tracking this, and what are some success stories that you can speak to existing customer base?
Cool. So there's a number of ways that we support our customers on the climate side specifically. So first of all, like achieving behavioral change. So we apply behavior change theory, achieve measurable results. Secondly, we're supporting particularly our government clients with data on where people are riding and how safe and comfortable do they feel on different routes in their city or community. And that data is then used to help them spend the money they have for bike lanes, et cetera, most efficiently to have the most impact of improving the biking environment. Ultimately, though, we are, especially with our new app that we're launching, the impact of biking that it has on the world currently is not like all those bike trips, billions of bike trips a year, right? That impact is not being measured right now. So if you think about measurement in biking, people typically think of something like Strava, right? Or an app like that, Map My Ride, Ride for GPS. You have to get out your phone, open the app, press start, ride your bike, get off your bike, park your bike, lock your bike, open your phone, open the app, press stop. So you do that for a longer training ride, right? I'm doing a 50-mile ride. I'm going to log that on Strava. But if you go 1.2 miles down to Studioplex, to the cafe, or to meet with someone, you're not going to track that ride. So all those short trips, all that impact that biking has is not currently being measured. So our new app basically passively tracks. It's basically Fitbit for biking. Before Fitbit, some people wore a pedometer on their belts in the morning. No, hardly anyone did. And so all the impact of steps wasn't being measured. And that's basically where biking data is at right now, right? It's at 2007 before Fitbit. It takes work to track these rides. We're making it passive automatic. And so we are measuring the impact, we're aggregating it, we're anonymizing it, we're utilizing it, and ultimately we're monetizing it. In terms of the actual behavioral change that we achieve, I think our average is about 31% of new riders start riding regularly after 3 months. And then about 20 to 30% of people who aren't riding for transportation, so they might ride recreationally, might ride not at all, take up riding for transportation, including riding to work. And so, and that's typically measured after 3 months. That's kind of our sort of follow-up survey that we do at the initial one. And the cool thing about a new app is that we won't have to rely on surveys, which is basically what the whole transportation industry is relied on is, hey, William, in the last 2 weeks, how often have you driven to work? 1 day a week, 2 days a week, 3 days a week. So it's the best we've had to measure behavior. And with this passive tracking technology, it's really going to change the game about measuring the impact of different approaches, measuring the impact of different programs, not just our own programs, but what our customers want to try out. So if you're a city and you want to try out a e-bike rental scheme or loan bike scheme where you rent people an e-bike for a month, what impact does that have?
Right.
And so by using our app, we can see exactly the changes in that person's travel behavior, during the month they have the bike. And after that, a year later, we can still check how their travel behavior has been impacted by an approach. So really excited by the potential of the technology that we're building, that this investment from Valor is helping us enable and complete the build of.
Right. And so the value prop is really the modernization of collecting bike data and enabling your customers, both businesses and government organizations, to track, benchmark, and work towards their climate goals. So really interesting approach here, Thomas. And I want to shift the conversation a bit more. And one of the things that made this investment rather attractive to our team was that you were able to grow Love to Ride rather efficiently and in an organic fashion. And would love for you to share with some of our listeners, many who are early stage founders, share with them some of the levers that you were pulling as the founder during this early stage of the company to achieve this type of efficient and organic growth.
I mean, the first thing is just plain hustle. You gotta work. And I was lucky enough to start growing this company before I had any kids. And yeah, the hard work thing is a real deal. But naturally, you got to work smart too, right? So like asking the questions, what's the best use of my time right now? Being well organized and focused. So like, as much as it is important to focus on doing something, you got to be aware of what you shouldn't be doing right now, right? You got to give some stuff up. So that focus and then that straight hard work. I mean, frugality is key, man. I mean, once you raise a bit of money, things might change a little bit, obviously, because you got more money to deploy. But ask my team, man, I'm pretty tight because leveraging every dollar, even that 2 million in revenue, like we're leveraging it hard, right? And so probably it's good to have money to spend more money on marketing, and obviously, we were growing and building our tech. That was the main thing. We were reinvesting all our retained earnings and profit. And so yeah, being frugal, working hard, being focused, getting good advice, not paying much or too much for that advice, getting genuine people who want to help you and support you, on the team. And then these things take time, man. Like it's having a sense of urgency is really good, and you should have that. But if you look at just how slowly some companies have grown or changed a market, like a friend of mine, Tim Norton, he was getting into the online accounting space ages ago, like 2004 kind of situation, right? Like just a million years ago, and thought that within a couple of years, the big players would flip over to having things on the cloud. And it wasn't until basically Xero came along that started changing. And then ages later, QuickBooks, like probably a decade later, QuickBooks launched their cloud version of what he had started building a decade before then. So he just thought it was going to be game over before then. But these things take time, man. So just, take the wins, work steady. Probably raise money a bit earlier than I did.
Yeah,
I would say that there's a lot of value in going through and getting investment, on all levels, right? It validates your idea that you've got a good idea and that you should be spending your own time in it. Doesn't say if no one backs you, you should stop doing it if you believe it. It's just good sense testing of what you're working on. But yeah, I mean, there's lots of other things I could probably talk about.
Yeah. No, those are really great insights. And you briefly touched on your team. And it seems like a lot of your team is distributed across multiple continents right now. And so obviously we're in the world of the post-pandemic where being distributed is natural now. It's second nature. So tell us more about some of the tips and tricks and learning lessons that you had of building and hiring and collaborating with a distributed team across multiple time zones, geographies, and cultural boundaries as well.
Yeah. I think the main thing I'd say is just like be human, like people are people. Be real, be authentic. Like it's connecting over Zoom or whatever your video conferencing of choices is, it can be difficult or a bit more. I mean, we're missing a bit. It's 2D. You get a lot from video, but you don't get everything. And so then you have to really make sure you're taking the time to try and connect with people genuinely and bake in some social time into your meetings to check in with people. A few more minutes at the beginning of a meeting to have a human connection and check in can make the rest of the meeting and conversations you have and getting agreement or asking people to do something difficult will be easier if you're more connected with them. And of course, getting together in person when you can also be really helpful and beneficial. So we've always had sort of retreats. So I pretty much grew up in the startup world fully remote. My business partner, Tim Norton, again, he got us on Google Docs way early, and like with my first business in 2007, and got us on Skype. That was the thing at the time. And so I've grown up with it. Our first employee was in a different city, and that being said, there's a lot of value. Like most of our staff are in the UK, and most of them are in a city they call Bristol. And so they benefit from an office culture and all that. And we often come and meet at the Bristol office and get that FaceTime there. But being conscious about your culture is the other thing, like with your team, like what is it that makes working for you and your company special or unique, or what do they want to see? How do they want to see that culture grow? Because when you raise a bit of money, you hire more staff, and it can be very easy to bring people on who aren't onboarded into the culture, and then you lose your culture. And so it's really important. Like we're doing an exercise, or started doing it before we even closed our round, on like defining that culture. Because if you lose your culture, it can get real slippery real quick. And also the culture can be the glue that not only brings you together, but makes you successful. And so being conscious about what is your culture? What are your values? What do you want to instill? Because every industry is a bit different. Every entrepreneur and every team of people coming together be a bit different. So there's no real true blueprint. It's what's important to you and your business that's going to determine that ideal culture.
Yeah. And we hear that and really talk about it with our portfolio companies. Because you're at this early seed stage, you have to establish a culture and iterate on that culture. The culture is going to change as you make hires and people leave the company. So I think that's great insight there. And you talked about timing as well earlier, right? As you reflect and you think about cities in the US historically have been pretty siloed and disconnected, with mainly the only focal point connecting neighborhoods has been mass transit systems, which have only worked in a handful of cities here in the US. And so as you think about the timing and the readiness of biking and other forms of micromobility coming to the US, what are your thoughts on the country being ready to widely adopt micromobility practices?
Yeah, timing is interesting. I mean, we are, I wouldn't say lucky. There are three major global trends. So there might be things in the short term and the midterm, like scooters coming into cities and bike share and stuff, and that went up, and that has gone down a little bit since its peak, obviously. And those little bumps in the road when you consider the timeline of these global trends. So think climate change and sustainability, massive long-term trend. Health, like public health, getting people active and fit and living longer and helping overcome all these hugely expansive illnesses, diabetes and heart disease, et cetera, and cancer. And the other big trend is like the need for data. I mean, all these cities and organizations, you can't get away with not having data. And so we're well positioned, shall I say, rather than lucky, that we are helping where those major global trends are on our side of the business and they're going to support its growth. And yeah, there are going to be some bumps in the road and some ups and some downs. And there are also some historic headwinds, as you point to, with transit, with transit not being as successful in many cities in the US. There are obviously some exceptions to that, but yeah, transit's had a bit of a tougher time here than in, say, Europe or some of the other parts of the world.
Why do you think that is?
Oh, man, that's deep. I mean, I think part of the problem is just like straight urban design. Like you look at a city like Amsterdam, right? The density, like people are living in high density areas. So a lot of people are living in a square mile. You compare that to a suburb here in America, which is there's a massive suburban population and area. And if I think about putting a tram or a bus down in Amsterdam, where there's thousands and thousands of people within a 400-meter walk, they say basically to walk to a transit stop, no more than 400 meters. You want everyone to be 400 meters, so 500 yards or whatever, within a transit stop, because then you can walk down the road and get a bus. But if that 400 meters becomes a mile and you got to walk a mile to get to your nearest transit, and then because of there's not many people near that transit line, what then happens is the frequency of the buses, they can't support a high number of buses, so the bus comes every half an hour or every hour, and then it's not convenient. So in a lot of cities like London, they don't even have like a timetable. It's not, the bus isn't coming at 3:29. The bus is coming every 10 minutes. So you're going to be waiting at most 10 minutes. And of course, now there's apps and technology which shows you it's coming in 6 minutes. So that the straight urban design of America has been a massive holdback, and technology will change that in due course. I can imagine like an Uber type service where you could call a sort of shuttle that would pick you up from the suburbs and take you to a high transit line. But obviously in the meantime, we've got this thing called a bicycle. And that massively increases that 400-meter mark, right? Because you might be happy to bike a mile and a half, 2 miles or more to get to MARTA or to get to somewhere. And in Las Vegas, I was there many years ago now, and all the buses there had bike racks on the front. So you don't think of Las Vegas as a biker city. You think of it as this big suburban city. But you've got a lot of people in Las Vegas who are working in these hotels or casinos and not all making much money. And so they don't want to drive and pay for parking at the hotel, right? And so they're looking to bus, and they're coming from cheaper suburbs, and so they might do that, 1.5 mile bike ride, which isn't much, you don't even really get a sweat on. And then you put your bike on the front of the bus and you drive in. A lot of other places around the world, you park your bike at the train station. So you just roll up, park your bike and get on the train, or you can take your bike on the train station. I think the power of the bike to kind of, they call it like first mile, last mile kind of thing, like the mile to get to the bus or the train, then the mile to get from the train station to your office or destination. And biking can really help that and make it a lot faster and a lot cheaper. People are conscious of money, and let alone the climate impact of that, right? So getting more people on bikes can have a real impact on this bigger transit and transportation issue, including getting people using transit more.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, just being here in Atlanta, you go to the Beltline on a weekend or a beautiful day like it is today, and you see nothing but people riding bikes, manual bikes, electric bikes, whatever it is. And so really interesting. And I think you're right about the density differences that exist in places like Amsterdam and broader versus the US. So I think there is a huge opportunity for somebody who's passionate about solving for these issues at scale to build software and technology to help the US better adopt this technology and become a more climate friendly country as a whole. So interesting impact there. And as you sort of think about Love to Ride here in Q2 2023, what are some of the things that you're excited about for the rest of this year and looking beyond, right? You have over, I think, 600,000 members on the app, over 105 million miles tracked. What do you envision for Riderr and Love to Ride over the next few months, years down the road?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to be excited about right now in our business, especially just closing this seed round with Valor. So, obviously bringing in some more capability into the business, some new team members and expertise. And we're launching this new app. We've got this new app that's in open beta on iOS, but we're finishing the Android version of it, and that's that passive tracking app. And we're building some cool new features in there, so allowing riders around the world to basically rate the routes that they ride on. So give feedback to the city on how safe and comfortable they feel on different routes. And we can aggregate all that data, and cities can view this sort of stress map of their city or this comfort map and use that data to make decisions. And so that's going to be super cool for a whole lot of reasons. Great for riders to enable them to contribute to making their community more bike friendly, and that benefits them and their community. Great for cities, cool, interesting set of data that will be useful to identify problem areas in their city. Use that data to make a business case to local residents, to local businesses, to elected officials, to colleagues. Hey, we're taking out these 3 car parking spaces and putting in this bike lane here because 88% of people who bike here feel unsafe and uncomfortable. And so they can also use it to measure sort of ROI and return on investment, because they can, once they put a bike lane in or some kind of infrastructure, we can, the next time someone rides down there, we'll ask them to re-rate that bit and tell us how their experience has changed. And we can use that data to sort of justify that investment and further investment in more biking infrastructure because of the impact, the real impact that it's having on people's experience of biking in our cities. We're also looking at a rebrand. So we're looking to rebrand our app to the Riderr app. Another thing I would encourage founders to do is find a agency, like a design agency, a proper one, who are passionate about your business and what you're doing, and who can, we spent 15,000 British pounds, which is what, $20,000. That was a few years ago now when we started the company, but it was the best 15,000 pounds I ever spent, because we got a agency to give us a badass brand and stood the test. We've had this brand for 8 years, and we still get great comments and feedback on the color and the feeling of our brand and our brand assets. And their brand guidelines are like on the internet as like a example. With this, some agency is like top brand guidelines, and our brand is included in that as a. So we had a cool brand, so it's good money. And so we'll do the same thing again. We'll go to an agency, do it properly. It is worth the money. That's one thing I would say is worth the money. What else are we excited about? Oh, I mean, just getting more customers and more riders, man. I mean, like that, we have a stories feature on our site, and we obviously measure changes in behavior, and to combine those two things, right? See all the data and the volume of change that you're having, and then see these real life stories of people getting back on the bike after 20 years and rediscovering like this feeling of freedom and fun and being outside and arriving at places with a smile and feeling energized because they just like move their body to get somewhere, like all this stuff. And then people with like MS getting back on bikes, and it's just super cool. And we have this feature in Love to Ride, which is about encouraging other people. We track that. So we track, if you encourage someone to ride a bike, we measure that on the platform. And then you can see like, okay, you've encouraged 20 people to join the platform, and this is how much riding they're doing. But then we also track the next layers down, right? So you encourage your friend Jules, and then Jules encourages 10 people. And one of those people encourages like the whole company to sign up. And there's kind of this pay it forward, like measurement of impact. So it's pretty cool that we're able to do that and show that impact that people are having. And we're going to do some more work on that to visualize it in a whole nother way, and visualize it for brands and companies who help us out too, right? So it's a cool time.
Yeah, I love the gamified sort of approach here to building the app and encouraging riders to add more riders to the app. And then I think you all have a lot of tailwinds behind you, given the regulatory standpoint that is now taking shape over the country. I think the Inflation Reduction Act was one of the single largest climate change investments made by the American government in history. I think it was 369 billion, I believe. And so like things like that are really going to be a positive sea change for Riderr as you all go to markets.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of federal dollars, not just here in America, but around the world. And as climate becomes more and more pressing to address, when you look at something like biking, like getting some people, especially those short trips, like half of all trips are under a couple of miles kind of thing. It's a crazy number of trips that are bikeable, even here in the US without that density. And so, and there's a whole bunch of quiet streets, man. Like we talk about putting in more bike lanes. Think about how much of your city is a quiet street. A lot of your city is a quiet street. But we drive on those main busy roads because they're faster in a car, typically. Not always if they're fully congested, then it's faster on a bike. But one block over from that fast, busy street is typically a quiet street that you could ride a bike on. So we do have a lot of latent infrastructure, and 1 in 3 Americans on a bike. So we've got a lot of latent demand there. And what we're trying to do here at Love to Ride, right, is get more of those people to rediscover, get back on that bike, get it tuned up, get it on the road again, slowly over time, get their confidence up, and then eventually get them to ride for transportation. But we recognize one of the behavior change theories, on which we probably do not have time today to talk about, is this idea of baby steps, right? Like getting people to do a little wee step in the right direction. A quick one, real quick. There's a guy called BJ Fogg out of Stanford's behavioral unit. And he says, if you want to run every day, don't commit to running a mile every day or 2 miles every day or whatever. Just commit to putting your running shoes on, going at your front door and locking the door. If you then lock the front door and go back in, that's okay. You did the thing today. But chances are, it's a small commitment. I'll put my shoes, go out the front door. You'll be like, I may as well run around the block. And you'll find that you'll do that behavior more because it's a small little step. So we would apply that on the Love to Ride platform throughout the whole experience, really, of getting people to think about the next tiny little step on that behavioral journey.
Incremental steps create and lead to big progress.
Right, exactly.
And so as we wrap up this conversation, Thomas, I think you shared a lot of great insights for our listeners. And obviously, Love to Ride is operating at the forefront of biking and software and technology for governments and businesses of all sizes. But there's a ton of climate spending. I think climate spending and climate funding that is coming from investors as well. Are there any opportunities that you see for founders who are looking to build and solve problems in this space to tackle now because of market timing and an influx of venture dollars coming into the market?
Oh, I don't doubt there's a whole ton. I mean, like, and I read something today on like a Crunchbase thing that there's that the amount of investment money going into climate-based startups is not really slowing down as much as every other sector. So it's an exciting time to be in the climate space, and certainly in tech. As far as advice for entrepreneurs, like, yeah, definitely always be on the lookout for opportunities. But I learned early on to pick an entrepreneurial endeavor in a business that, one, you're passionate about. You gotta be passionate. Secondly, that's in line with your values. Like, you've got to really believe in it. And it's thirdly, like, the expertise thing is no joke. I've been in this biking industry for 20 years, right? So I know a lot about the market and the customers. And getting into a new market right now, or a new sort of opportunity, you might see a thing. Like, I see a lot of entrepreneurs who have like seen an opportunity to do something. And sometimes that can work out, and sometimes you lose steam because you're not passionate about it. Sometimes you kind of drop the ball because you don't know that market or industry as well as you could or should, or you end up like selling a product or a service that you don't really isn't really in line with your values, and so you kind of lose that moral steam, which I think is actually quite important. Yeah. But yeah, if you meet all those 3 criteria and you see an opportunity, absolutely go for it. Give it a real good crack. And there's money out there for it, and there's a supportive community of other entrepreneurs and founders and investors and just good people who want to see you succeed. And so it's a good time to be in climate tech, so helping to solve the problem.
Right. Thomas, thank you for joining me today. You've shared a lot of insights about your background in New Zealand and going across the world, and how you ultimately became extremely passionate about this problem. And now you're building software to solve for governments and businesses around the world. And we're really excited about the impact that you've had on climate change, and looking forward to supporting you along this journey of building Love to Ride.
Awesome. Hey, thanks so much, William. Enjoyed the conversation, and I hope your listeners got something out of it. So thank you.
Thanks. Cheers.